So I want to just sort of round this out and close out the session by speaking on behalf of the South Fulton HOA Alliance. And I'll be the first one to come out of the closet. I am a concerned homeowner, right? And I've always been a concerned homeowner, especially after going through the lawsuit process with Marvin. I was one of the guys that sued for that right to vote. And I'll use Marvin Arrington's word. They wish they would have let us vote. So, in fact, we end up becoming board members of Regency Oaks before we even reached the 90%. They wanted to get out of there so fast because we were holding them accountable because we took time to read over those governing documents. And I'll be honest. I signed the dotted line because I was so excited to close on that home. Right? Hey, that big old stack of paper they call the declaration, I just slid it to the side, signed the end document, and I was ready to move. Right? Well, I want to take some time to talk about why the HOA boot camp. Yes. My name is Corro'll Driskell. Right? So you probably have seen messages that come out or goes out from me in reference to a lot of the actual activities for the HOA Alliance. I'm going to bounce back and forth. Now, the first thing I want to do, folks, is say, hey, thank you to all of the sponsors who helped bring this actual event together, right? From Fulton County over to Fulton County Police Department, the DA's office, Starbucks, of course, Marvin Arrington and Arrington and Phillips, Wiseman for Jason LaMonaco, and a number of other sponsors that we have. Did I miss anybody? And of course, the Georgia HOA Alliance, right? Because we have a great vision moving forward. So just a little bit about my passion around the HOA Alliance. When I was finishing up my undergrad, right, as an urban policy studies student, I used to go in and lobby on behalf of the counties of Georgia, which is 159 counties. So when we started to take over the HOA, I was amazed at the strength of the HOAs. If we have 159 counties that have representation at the legislation, how many HOAs do you think exist in each and every one of those counties? So if you think about the representation there, we're representing thousands of individuals who own homes and have no voice at the table. Now, I've had people come to me and talk about the CAI, Community Association Institute. Great, lots of information that comes out of there, but they're represented by management companies and other partners who do business with the HOA. So how did I get myself in this trouble? Right? So I am a member of the Regency Oaks Board of Directors. In fact, I am the actual president on that board. And I'll be honest with you, once you serve on a board, your whole perspective changes, right? Because you're accountable to a good number of individuals within that home, within that association. So I've gathered a strong interest in reading case laws. I'm not an attorney, so that I can understand or have some insight on the decisions that the board make and how they would actually hold up in court. So say, for example, collections. Folks, you got to do it right. You got to follow the processes. So I just wanted to highlight that I'm also a graduate of the United Way VIP program. Why do I think that the United Way VIP program is so important? Because it opened my eyes to the actual risk that's associated with being on a board. Not only being on a board, but actually being a homeowner that's subject to restrictions, whether you know about them or not. We are subject to those restrictions, and we have a duty of obedience as homeowners, meaning we have to obey those documents. So if I reflect back on my training with United Way VIP, going into the finances, thinking about the legalities, thinking about the overall management, I was shocked. In fact, I had came to the conclusion, if I would have went through that training before joining the board, I may not have taken on the responsibility of being a board member, right? Because as a board member, we have a number of individuals that we have to answer to. So my final lesson in that regard is that I work for the individuals that I represent in the association. You all didn't hear that, did you?
Everybody.
But not a lot of us know about that. Again, another lesson I learned in the United Way VIP, and of course I had to take those lessons and sort of apply them to the HOA. All board members are volunteers. And what I mean by that, as long as they're doing their best and trying to learn about running that association, they should not be persecuted. Now, to sit down and have a discussion with them, whether you agree or not, there's always an avenue for consensus. So I'll be honest, I have been around from association to association just to observe some of the annual meetings, some of the actual concerns that come from members, some of the concerns in reference to board members, and everyone has a valid point. But once you get to litigation, you're paying out both sides. It's a losing battle because that's monies that's attached to each and every home. So with that said, I'll just move on. Oh, almost forgot. I encourage each and every individual that's either sitting on a board or has a desire to sit on a board, an interest, even if you don't want to sit on a board, to attend the United Way VIP training, volunteer improvement program. And by the way, we have Janice Robinson over here, so I definitely want to make sure we give a hand to the United Way VIP program for So if you want to talk to Janice about the United Way VIP program, she'll be available outside. She has cards. The next session is March 16th, 2015. The application opens up in January. Again, I implore you, please go through that actual program. Yes, ma'am.
This question is just about motivating unmotivated residents.
Mm-hmm.
This goes back to your stating, had you taken the VIP program prior to the board, you would not have joined the board.
Possibly.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I mean, and it's really important to me. I mean, it may sound like a silly question, but my problem is motivating my members.
Okay.
And giving them a vision of how important their participation is.
Okay. I can address that.
So having that come from someone like yourself who's dead in the middle of it. You know, that's scary.
Okay, so let me elaborate. So the question is in reference to encouraging members of your community to get involved. And I'll be honest, the core of all of our problems is apathy, right? Because, you know, I hear questions about financial concerns. Well, they wouldn't become a concern if we didn't have apathy in our community, because you would take a look at those financial statements. You would demand, you know, answers to purchases, right? In my community, because I've been through this actual training and I've observed some of these actual meetings, we took a different approach on proposing budgets for 2015. We moved our meeting date so that we can give individuals ample time to review proposed budgets for next year. We're soliciting feedback. So if you listen to that story, why will we even consider, you know, leveraging something like the South Fulton HOA Alliance? So think about it. I have a number of questions up here. I'm not even going to go through them all. But these are just some of the questions that we have, whether we're on the board or not. But when I took on the role or the responsibility to join the board, I needed help on these answers. And thanks to my relationship with certain people throughout South Fulton, I was able to leverage the experience of existing board members who've been around for quite some time. Any of these questions sound familiar? What is a declaration? We still get that question today for people who live in my community, you know, the entire 12 years. What are the neighborhood living standards? What's the process for renting the clubhouse? How do you all deal with the monies? And that list goes on. And I'll come out to call it again. We are a self-managed association. We took on that task so that we can learn more about the business of the corporation. Now, we're evaluating management companies, but there's a significant amount of value of experience. So why not share that experience with other communities, whether you're self-managed or not?
Mr. Driskell.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I should have raised my
That's all right. My question to you is, how do you deal, the best way to deal with individuals, whether board members or community residents,
Yes, ma'am.
who are reticent to go against power? You see, they think they don't have the ability to question management. You have developed and you have an innate sense of confidence within yourself to be able to challenge the management company or challenge the board on positions or things that are happening. How do you encourage board members and residents to be willing to go up and representing their neighborhood to go up against power?
All right, so can I change this question up a little
Sure.
bit? So I'm going to throw a little salt and pepper on it. The question is in reference to how do you challenge the people that have authority? And what that means is that as a board, and I'm speaking from a board member's perspective, we have a duty to respond to any inquiries about any of our activities. Now, how do we respond? If a community member come up and speak to me directly, and if it's a conversation, I will engage. But if it's a confrontation, then I can't engage in a confrontation because from what I've learned, things get sort of emotional based on ignorance. Let me elaborate on that. A lot of times, we are challenged based on items that are spelled out in the declaration. People who are not even reading the declaration, or they have a high level of apathy, and they're focusing on one specific thing, like to come out and try to do the challenge. That's why I encourage individuals to start reading those governing documents. In fact, from a Regency Oaks perspective, we're going to start training our members using free technologies, right, face-to-face, Google Hangout Air, to train individuals on different aspects of our governing documents. The one that hits home a lot is the restrictions. There are a lot of people who just don't want to deal with the restrictions when it's not convenient for them. But we have to respect our neighbors. So say, for example, you may have a dog. You're allowed to have a dog. But if your dog is in the yard and it's barking day in and day out throughout the night, in our community, you have to have the sign off on everyone around you. The moment someone perceives that dog as a nuisance, we have a duty of obedience to take care of that. Ultimately up to the point where we ask the neighbor to remove the dog from the property. And there's that authority, but most people don't like that, but they haven't read the governing documents. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
I can get a little bit worded, just let me know.
My question is, we're mentioning apathy. I think for our community in particular, a lot of the apathy stems from the fact, I guess, that our actual community does not reflect the CCN office.
Okay.
So there were a lot of things that were allowed to slide for a very long time. So now as the HOA is coming in and trying to make changes to reflect that, encountering a lot of resistance, a lot of apathy, and so it's like, how are we supposed to go back in and basically make that transition?
So before I answer that question, so this leads into my point for the South Fulton HOA Alliance, and Marvin alluded to it a little bit earlier. Our whole purpose is to standardize on an approach to manage the operations of associations. That's number one, right? And taking a collective approach to ensuring that the HOAs are represented in the legislative body. So with that said, we have right now over 30 members that are a part of the HOA Alliance. And what that means is that we will work collectively to establish policies, right, that each and every member can leverage so that we can have that consistency across South Fulton. That's our focus with the South Fulton HOA Alliance. Now, from an apathy perspective, we consider that to be, that falls under community spirit. Now, if most individuals see that the grass is not being cut, or the flags are tattered, or the facilities are not taken care of, then you tend to have a higher level of apathy. So one of the simple things we like to do, because most people are visual, we replace the flags. Like right now, our flag, we just bought it about 6 months ago and it's tattered already. Immediately we turn around and we order new flags so that we can raise the flag. And believe it or not, it made a difference. We went from a 40% collection rate to now we're at 70%. People who haven't paid their dues for 3-4 years, and I'm talking about a significant amount, including fines. They come in and they see that things are getting done. They came and they paid their entire fine. I'm not talking about one or two people. I'm talking about a number of individuals. But while the management company and the developer was in place, people were refusing to pay their dues because they didn't understand where the dues went. So, yeah, it makes a big difference. But what I want to encourage individuals to take a look at, always remember that your board members are homeowners too. We're volunteers, and if their declaration is like ours and in the bylaws, we can't receive any form of payment. Did anybody else hear me? Yeah. So you know what a good date is for me and my wife? Managing some association business. She's here today with me. My son, 4 years old. Where you going, Daddy? You going to have a meeting at the clubhouse? That has become an integral part of my family. And so we're giving up a lot of our personal time. So if you have disagreements on the table, I don't care if you're in legal battles. I know attorneys got to make their hours. It would behoove the association and the individuals to sit down and come up with something that you can swallow. Something that you can agree, because you're not going to get 100% of what you want, whether you go before the judge or not. It's costly, and it's not effective. Yes, sir.
In many instances in real estate matters, especially between landlord and tenant, there's a court available for arbitration before going to court. Is there any such arbitration process for homeowners and associations?
Oh, great question. The question is in reference to arbitration for homeowners and associations. Believe it or not, your association can establish that policy, right? Whether you go back to your homeowners and you include it in your association or bylaws, or you just come up with a policy that governs that. But arbitration is just as expensive, if not more, than going through a legal proceeding with attorneys arguing for both sides. So it may seem that these attorneys are adversarial. They're just doing their job, right? They're going to advocate for their client. Let me move to the next slide.
Did I understand you to say that you have a problem with trans registration in your among your old HOA membership?
Okay, so the question is in reference to my explanation or my statement about voting. The short answer is yes. They because we wanted a change, right? And keep in mind we have been voting, and this was just the advisory committee, by the way, not the actual board, because the declarant assigned their members to the board. When we didn't like the fact that the advisory committee seemed like they were not representing the position of the association,